Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to White Lions F1, and today I'm doing yet another podcast. Now, before I start this actual podcast, which is about motorsport and kind of the future of motorsport and the future of F1, I'm going to quickly talk about the Hungarian Grand Prix. As you know, I didn't actually do the race analysis because I didn't get to watch the race live, but I kind of figured in this podcast I'll quickly talk about it because I don't really want to do a full race analysis because honestly it was a little bit of an average race in my opinion. I didn't really enjoy watching all the highlights and stuff. I didn't think it was that great because it sort of set itself up to be quite interesting and then kind of nothing really happened. But for those of you guys who don't know, Vettel won the race. Hamilton came fourth. Raikkonen came second. Bottas came third after a bit of a switch up between Hamilton and Bottas. Verstappen came fifth, but if he didn't mess up at the beginning and take Ricciardo out, then he would have. And he got a penalty for what he did because as a result of taking Ricciardo out, he got a 10-second time penalty, had to add that in the pits, and then ended up going back to fifth. And if he didn't get that 10-second penalty, then when he finished the race, if you take away those 10 seconds, he would have been right behind Vettel. So that shows you actually how much he kind of shafted himself with his little mistake. It's all sorted out now. Ricciardo was understandably fuming about it, but they resolved it as men. Anyway, so Ferrari kind of just dominated the weekend completely. They were just way ahead of Mercedes. I was going to say that the Mercedes have sort of got the car back together to how they wanted it, but on a track that's very, it's not very power orientated because it's got a lot of technical corners and so on, and tight corners and so on. It shows a lot about the aerodynamic capabilities of the car rather than the power unit. And that's why the Mercedes struggled a little bit more because the Ferrari car actually is a little bit shorter. It's got a smaller wheelbase ever so slightly than the Mercedes, so that means it's a little bit more nimble on its feet, kind of thing. And that kind of showed in the race. The Mercedes car became a bit of a diva again, as it was at the start of the season. But it's now the summer break, or whatever. So. There's quite a few weeks until the next race. A lot of development will happen in that time. But it was generally a bit of a meh race. It started to set itself up slightly towards the end because Vettel started to have a bit of a steering issue, was losing time, but then in the end he sort of got on top of it and it was fine. Raikkonen had a bit of an empty race in my opinion. Hamilton was actually at times faster, was looking to be fast enough to actually catch up to Raikkonen. After he did a switch with Bottas, the team said, right, you're faster than Bottas, we think. We're going to give you a certain amount of laps to see if you can overtake Raikkonen by doing a switch. He tried to switch, couldn't overtake Raikkonen, and then on the very final lap, on the very final corner, he allowed Bottas to take his place back for the podium, which strategically made no sense, but it was more of like a gentleman's agreement. He was man of his word, and it was a bit of a team player kind of thing because I think if he didn't do that, it would have been so painful. Because even though it would have helped Hamilton a little bit in the Drivers' Championship, because those 3 points they lost makes a massive difference. He's now 14 points behind again. It would have made things in the team really, really awkward. It was a bit of a, if he didn't do that, if he didn't give the position back, it would have been a bit of a Sebastian Vettel and what was his name? Mark Webber, that's the one, Mark Webber incident with the whole multi-21 kind of thing many years back. But for the most part, actually Alonso came sixth, I believe, so that's pretty solid. But again, that's probably because it was a track where the engine doesn't matter that much. If it was a track that the engine matters, then he probably wouldn't have done that well. In fact, he definitely wouldn't have done that well. But it just shows how good Alonso really is. It was quite funny actually, speaking about that, because Martin Brundle kind of took the mick out of Alonso because on the grid or outside the garages where they had that famous image of Alonso on the sunbed getting a tan in his race overalls, and they had that on the floor, and then Alonso came with his own sunbed, just sort of sat there and imitated it, and it was really funny. And Martin Brundle kind of took the mick out of it, saying it's not that good. It shows that's why certain teams don't want him. And Button came to the defense of Alonso, and I just thought it was so brilliant. And I agree with Button. I think as a guy who's very demotivated with his car, he deserves to have a little bit of fun and celebrate the fact that he got a decent result, because he kind of showed his quality that he still possesses, and if he was in an even faster car, then who knows what he could have done, what he still can do, in fact. So, but about after that's kind of it. But yeah, so I may as well crack on with the rest of the podcast itself. Also, you might have noticed that the setup's slightly different. I've got the microphone out right here. I'm just kind of trying something a little bit different because I kind of want to separate how a podcast looks to like a normal race analysis or a video like that. So because I think if the setup looks the same every time, then what real difference is there? So I thought, you know what, I'll try a different setup and see how it goes. So talking about like F1, Future of F1 at the moment, the big thing to talk about is the fact that it's pretty much confirmed that Halo systems will be coming into F1 by 2018. The FIA have done lots of tests, and they finally decided that the best solution to this issue, this head restraint issue, the issue for head protection, the best solution is the Halo system, which some people aren't particularly happy about. I'm not actually happy about at all. But it's kind of the direction F1's going. Really annoying, but it's kind of how it is. They tried out other ideas as well. Notably, being what I thought would have been the best one. Kind of thought actually was it's like a cockpit where basically it's like what fighter jets have. They have that really strong cover over them, and they tried that and it was all right, but didn't have the same results as a solid physical halo over in front of the drivers. I'm not that happy with it because I think it's so backwards in F1. I think the whole point of F1 being so good is that it's dangerous. In my opinion, I think the reason why F1's kind of got such a massive following and the caliber to it is that the drivers still seem like gladiators, even when they didn't probably last season before that, where it kind of looked like it was a little bit too easy for them. This season, you're seeing, particularly with Hamilton, like he did in Spain and this weekend at Hungaroring, he was absolutely knackered in that car. You could hear he was panting and wheezing, and it shows that the cars really are that difficult, and they're really that challenging on your body, and they have the effectively like no gap for error. You see, like we saw like Australian Grand Prix in I think it was practice or quali when Daniel Ricciardo went into a corner, lost the back slightly, and then absolutely shot him out. And that's what we see really with these cars, that they're that dangerous. But that's kind of the point. They're meant to be. That this is the absolute pinnacle of motorsport. It doesn't get any more dangerous and exciting. Well, exciting depends how you interpret it. And incredible and innovative as this, it needs to be open top. But because of what happened, of course, with the death at Suzuka, they're saying, right, we need to we've got to make sure this never happens again. But I kind of don't think that's right at all. I think that's actually a little bit insulting, in my opinion, to all the legends of the past, and dare I say, actually towards Jules Bianchi, because I think, obviously, like I'm not speaking for him, of course, but I think like he went into this race, it went into F1 knowing the risks as well, and he was simply, he died kind of doing what he loved, and the whole point of VSC was to alleviate the issue that happened with him. So why do we need halo protections if we've got VSC? Because we saw with Massa many years ago that you can still get serious head injuries whether you have a halo system or not, even though, because when he had that like bolt or suspension or shock absorber, whatever it was like a spring that came off another car and it flew out and just smacked him in the face in the middle of a race, and it completely knocked him out, and he had a massive and he it was a serious injury. There's still the chance that kind of thing can still happen, because even though a halo system for them covers major things hitting you, there's still huge gaps because the drivers need to see it, of course. And I just don't like it. I think it looks ugly. I think Hamilton thinks it looks ugly. I think one of the most awesome things you see is when drivers are celebrating and they've got their arms out and they can clench their fists and punch the air and celebrate and climb out a little bit and be a bit close to the fans. And I think once you put a halo system over that, it's just a little bit more awkward. And also they need to work out the logistics of, imagine if a driver's seriously injured or something and they need to rescue him, they've now got to work around a halo system as well. And the whole point of having those special seats that you can just simply pull out of the cockpit is to make it a lot safer for them in that situation. But now you've got a halo system, you've got to work out how you're going to get around that as well. And then also, if a car was in a serious situation to dig into the ground or that halo system would do that. Like that's what it would end up doing in some form, I would assume, at least, depending on how they design it. It would make things even more dangerous because it would kind of make the car more stuck into the ground. Kind of like what we saw, I guess, with Richard Hammond when he crashed his dragster many years ago. The actual, roll cage, dug into the ground. But I guess a halo system probably, because of the way it's designed, probably wouldn't actually do that now I think about it. But, that is a possibility that they've probably considered and still need to think about because, of course, they'll be doing endless designs. I don't like it. Straight up, I don't like the way. I personally think that there are other ways around it. I think VSC has been successful. I think because it has alleviated that issue that that in a safety car situation or whatever, drivers can't be making those serious mistakes, their own driver errors, because they're all forced to go at a constant speed. So you be the judge. But I don't really like it. About Future of F1, well, at this current space and time at the moment, in the season specifically, what we're seeing is, I think overall the Ferrari is still the better car. I just think that Mercedes drivers are performing better because Kimi Raikkonen's not really been performing as well, because what we're seeing with Sebastian Vettel is what that car is capable of, but then there's Kimi Raikkonen. I don't think he's simply on the same caliber, probably because he's just a bit older, to unlock the full potential of that car. Hence why he always seems to be the guy who is, kind of second fiddle effectively. But Ferrari are managing to, get that car, improve that car more and more. Even though I think the Hungarian Grand Prix sort of doesn't speak too much, because it kind of told us what we already knew about that car, which is it's not as good as in a straight line, but it's better in the corners, and that just happened to be a track where corners were more important. So we've really got to wait a lot. This break now, Ferrari are going to work massively on ensuring that they don't ever lose that their league above Mercedes in terms of cornering capabilities, but they focus on mainly probably that outright speed, and Mercedes have to do the opposite because they know that outright speed they're probably the faster car because of their engine, but they know in the corners they still haven't fully unlocked how to make the car behave on specifically demanding tracks. Even though we thought that they'd finally sorted it out, I think they've still got a little bit of space to go. Obviously, Mercedes were at a particular disadvantage at the start of the season because their car was overweight, I think by about 6 kilos. And then over more developments and stuff, when they added their new packages, they started to reduce that and sort things out. But now they've got this extended 3 week break, and they were doing testing. I think even today, I think Bottas did like 130 odd laps at Hungaroring. So they obviously that's where they're going to be working, because actually that's probably the best place for them right now to make sure that they can work on those corners, if it's going to be the ride height, camber, anything really, because the Ferrari car, that's something they're going to work on actually, because though their car is a little bit shorter, the rear end is slightly higher than the front end of the car, which has its own little characteristics, makes it actually a little bit more slidey, I think, but it depends how you do it. But hey, I don't know, the technicals all that great. So a lot is going to happen throughout this summer break, and as time goes on, and we learn a little bit more information. Of course, I'll do another podcast hopefully and let you guys know about the developments that are going on. But ultimately, the next race we see, which I can't actually remember what it is. I feel like it's Spa. But when that comes out, then we'll actually really know, and then we'll sort of analyse that and discuss that. So that's this side of the podcast, and the other thing I want to talk about now is the future of motorsport. So 2 big changes have recently happened. One, Porsche have announced that they're going to be leaving Le Mans. And the other thing is Mercedes have announced that they're leaving, I think, DTM, touring car or something like that. So, so that is two massive bits of news. And it's come at a very ironic time because, of course, UK laws have now announced that the plans are that by 2014, you can 2040, you can no longer buy. They're no longer allowing the sales of petrol cars or petrol, I think, and diesel, in fact, because it's just simply a case of moving with the times. Hence why F1 cars are hybrid systems. We've got electric cars, we've got Formula E, and so on. And it's simply, that's kind of all it really is they're moving with the times. Porsche, much like Audi did a year back, they announced that they're leaving. And Audi and Porsche, by the way, are the two big players. They were the big boys in Le Mans in their category. And Audi, after years of dominance alongside Porsche, announced that they moved into Formula E. And that's now exactly what Porsche are doing. They're moving towards Formula E because it's getting with the times. You know, gasoline and all these things that, and their old technology. It's, and the future is in Formula E. That's why the sport is picking up pace. We're seeing the cars becoming actually a little bit more exciting. And actually, I think Formula E is pretty exciting at the moment, even though the technology's not at that level. And the tracks obviously aren't that great because they're more or less just street circuits because they haven't really got the funding just yet. But I think it's really interesting because it's one of those races where, because they haven't got the funding to be as crazy as, Formula 1, it's very much the car. I think, in my opinion, at least, the cars are a lot more even, and the strategy calls are a lot more prominent. And whatever you do at one stage, how you use your battery pack, has a massive influence on what happens later in the race. So strategy calls and so on are huge, and it makes very interesting racing. And you see the talent of drivers coming out and play as well, and some of the crashes are pretty awesome as well. Because they haven't got the same downforce, and they're not on the same quality of tarmac as Formula 1. So you have a little bit more play and a bit of unpredictability, and it's kind of awesome. So that's what's going to be happening over time. The teams will slowly be migrating into that, and that's also what Mercedes are doing. And it's particularly prominent, I think, the Mercedes leaving DTM rather than Porsche leaving Le Mans, even though that was obviously massive, but it was extremely predictable, especially when Audi announced it. Because with Mercedes, that was the final naturally aspirated motorsport that Mercedes were in. And now they're leaving that. All their focus is going to be from next season in motorsport divisions. It's going to be on the hybrid technology and the and Formula E and electric and EV vehicles. Electric powered vehicles. And as I said earlier a couple of times, it's just getting with the times. Really, that is where the technology is going. That's where the future's going. Because the future is kind of coming upon us. Because 2040, for starters, is actually not that far away. It's 20, 22, 23 years, 22 and a half years. It's not that long away. And I guess I'll be I'll be nearly 40 when that happens. And actually, I will be about 40. Yeah, I will. I'll be about 40 years old. So, so I'll be that generation that is directly affected. So that's kind of exciting for me, actually. And it's also because the reason why I say I'll be directly affected, because obviously all this movement that they're doing now in motorsport, that's what translates to the production cars. That's why Audi have done it. That's why Porsche have done it. That's why Mercedes are doing it. That's what we see with like the Mercedes. They've had their own electric supercar with the SLS. Come on, it was like that massive green Mercedes SLS. It was a bit of a monster, but it was awesome. And then we've got like the Porsche 918, and then of course we've got McLaren with their P1. It's just how things are going, and it's pretty awesome because the technology that comes from there is going to come to production cars, and that's how things need to be, especially now because of the governments, the new laws that are coming out. This kind of needs to happen because otherwise their production cars will be so far behind what other companies are doing. I think that's also what Renault are doing, of course, because Renault are also in Formula E. So these are all things that are on a much bigger picture when you really think about it. These are things that are all massive long-term things, because I think Le Mans, obviously they've got a bit of hybrid technology in there, of course. It's still electric power specifically is still where things are going to go towards, and it's kind of no real surprise. It's something that's very inevitable and something that really needs to happen eventually. So it's quite exciting. It's a bit of a shame because everyone loves the sound of naturally aspirated vehicles. It's intoxicating. If you ever watch Bathurst and stuff like that and V8s, they just sound so mean. They're so awesome. And electric powered cars more of like a. It's just not really. It's just not as exciting. It's just not as cool. But it's probably a little bit more fun, I guess, because they'll probably be eventually a little bit faster, because obviously electric powered vehicles have instant torque, and absolutely no delay whatsoever in whatever vehicle, whatever electric powered vehicle you look at, because that's just how electric works. Electricity works rather, and that's kind of awesome. We're going to get to a stage where production cars are going to be really fast, really, really cool. And I saw this video, I think it was like by Car Throttle or something like that, and it was like a Renault, it was like some Renault Zoe concept car that was like, I don't know, I think it was like 600 horsepower, I can't remember exactly. And I just watched it, and it was just so cool. And it's quite exciting because that's kind of a bit of a glimpse into the future, and the future is electric. So it's no real surprise what we're seeing at the moment. It's inevitable. It is a bit of a shame, but it's just, as I've said so many times, you probably annoyed with me saying it now, but it's just getting with the times. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up this podcast. If you have enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, check out my previous videos. Comment below if there's anything specifically you want me to talk about, anything to discuss, anything that you want me to record and talk about, and of course I'll do my best to talk about it. There probably won't be a video. I'll probably try and do my best to record another video this week and get it up, of course, because there won't be a video next week, because next week from the 7th to the 14th I'm away in Germany. So obviously I won't be home. I won't have any opportunities really to do, any recording really. I'll just be trying to live my life a little bit. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you on the next one. See you later. Also, let's try this new setup. Do you like it? Let me know, because I think it's kind of cool. Nerd.